Today, Singapore commands one of the highest concentrations of wealth on the planet. But in August 1965, this was a crowded shantytown. It became an independent nation almost entirely by accident. Following deep political and racial tensions, Malaysia expelled Singapore from its federation. The island was forced into sovereignty overnight, cut off from its primary economic hinterland. The newborn state had no military to defend itself and zero natural resources to export. It possessed a domestic market too small to support an independent economy. Nearly 70% of the population lived in squalid, overcrowded slums. Unemployment hovered in double digits, and the aging colonial infrastructure was collapsing. Even more terrifying was the lack of fresh water. The island had no rivers or lakes, meaning every drop of drinking water had to be imported from Malaysia, a neighbor that was now openly threatening to cut off the supply. Survival in 1965 required abandoning political ideology for a policy of desperate, extreme pragmatism. That pragmatism was engineered by the country's first prime minister, Lee Kuan Yew. He understood that avoiding collapse meant making ruthless, long-term decisions that overrode immediate popular opinion. His government instituted a severe rule of law and empowered an independent anti-corruption bureau with sweeping authority. High-ranking officials were paid competitive corporate salaries to eliminate the temptation of bribery, and those caught stealing faced swift, harsh punishment. Ruthlessly enforcing political and legal stability created the exact functional baseline that was necessary to attract foreign capital. Singapore's one natural advantage was its geographic location on the Strait of Malacca, a maritime choke point. Instead of traditional trading, the government borrowed heavily to build massive container terminals, positioning the island as an unavoidable global logistics node. Today, nearly 20% of all global maritime trade passes through these specific waters, cementing the city-state's status as a global logistics node. While other post-colonial nations spent the 1960s and 70s nationalizing industries and restricting foreign ownership, Singapore deliberately went the opposite direction. They offered multinational corporations tax holidays, cheap industrial land, and a guarantee of a disciplined, strike-free workforce. Companies like Texas Instruments and General Electric quickly established manufacturing bases here. To stabilize that workforce, the government took aggressive control of the housing sector. They established the Housing and Development Board to clear the slums and construct massive blocks of subsidized public flats. So, a mandatory national savings scheme, workers used a portion of their salaries to purchase these flats. Overnight, a fractured, transient population became invested property owners with a literal stake in the country's success. They applied the same rigorous engineering to the water crisis. The government built extensive reservoirs to catch local rain and invested heavily in energy-intensive desalination plants. By utilizing advanced reverse osmosis membrane technology to purify and recycle wastewater, Singapore closed its water loop, creating a renewable supply and securing water independence. Systematically engineering solutions for geography, housing, and water created the stable launchpad necessary for the rapid economic acceleration that followed. That next phase required upgrading the workforce. The state mandated a bilingual education system, prioritizing English as the working language so its citizens could interface smoothly with Western corporate markets. This line chart tracking GDP per capita illustrates the impact of the government's next move. In the 1980s, they intentionally priced out cheap manufacturing and pivoted toward high-tech electronics and financial services, pushing this explosive upward curve far above regional competitors. Relaxed financial regulations and a bilingual workforce helped the state attract the ultra-mobile global capital it lacked at independence. The results of that pivot are visible across the current economy. Today, more than 7,000 multinational corporations use this small city-state as their Asian headquarters. Global business elites are drawn here by an obsessive dedication to physical connectivity, anchored by infrastructure like Changi Airport, one of the most highly integrated transit hubs on the planet. To prevent this dense concrete grid from becoming unlivable, planners mandate biophilic design. Developers must integrate vertical gardens and ecological corridors directly into the architecture to cool the ambient temperature. The physical landscape now reflects a careful balance, preserving the low-rise historic shophouses right at the base of towering modern financial districts. Singapore successfully evolved from a desperate, resource-starved transit point into an indispensable global destination. But executing this highly optimized, hyper-capitalist model has produced severe side effects. The cost of living is consistently ranked among the highest globally, and wealth inequality continues to stretch the social fabric. To sustain its relentless growth, the economy relies heavily on imported foreign labor, creating persistent friction between citizens and temporary workers competing for space on a crowded island. The political cost is equally apparent. The exact same ruling party has held power since independence. This continuity exists alongside limited civil liberties, constrained public protests, and a tightly regulated domestic press. Demographically, the workforce is aging rapidly. With birth rates dropping and absolutely no land left to expand outward, the state faces intense pressure to maintain its economic momentum without simply adding more people. Externally, rising sea levels directly threaten low-lying coastal infrastructure, while shifting geopolitical tensions between global superpowers threaten the open maritime trade that keeps the island alive. The same hyper-globalization that saved 20th century Singapore now acts as the primary source of its 21st century vulnerabilities. A new era of political leadership is now inheriting this complex machinery, tasked with navigating these modern constraints after decades of unbroken continuity. Modern Singapore remains an ongoing project of pragmatic survival. The island's history demonstrates how disciplined foresight can engineer extreme vulnerabilities into permanent global advantages.